We'd like to welcome you to another special edition of EMU Today TV. And this summer, I hope your summer is going very well. My name is Mark Esley, and I'm your host. And this is our second one this summer, and our objective is very simple: is to keep you informed with what the university is doing as it relates to COVID-19. We had our first one last month. The response was very strong. People loved it. So we're doing another one this particular month to get you ready for the fall and understand exactly what Eastern and Michigan University is doing. And to continue the conversation from last month, I'm so pleased to welcome back President Jim Smith. President Smith, thank you for joining us on a special edition of EMU Today.
Thank you, Mark. My pleasure to be here.
You know, you and I were talking before this interview. It's been a crazy summer, hasn't it, for you?
It has been probably the most unusual in my 35 plus years of administration, and I'm amazed each day it becomes a little crazier.
Yeah. You know, one of the things before we jump into the fall planning, one question I got from several people: any update on the graduation or potential graduation for the students who just came out of the winter semester, for example?
It's a great question, Mark. We've had discussions with the governor's office as recently as late last week. Our big stumbling block is how large that group could be. It appears that we would be above 3,000 with students and just a couple parents or significant others or brothers and sisters. Right now, we're just not sure that the governor would approve that large of a group indoors. So we're going to propose the possibility of maybe doing outdoors.
Okay.
The old days, many years ago, we did Rynearson Stadium. I don't know that would even be approved, but rest assured that we're working really hard to try to do this. As you know, Michigan and Michigan State have both canceled their December commencement. So we're trying to do something a little early and a little different, but we're going to keep our thoughts moving forward and try to get this done.
Okay, and let's talk about the fall. Let's just jump right into it. Schedules are scheduled to begin August 31st next month. Kind of provide us with an update. I know you continue to move cautiously and pragmatically as it relates to the fall. What are the updates that you have for our viewers who are tuning in to find out what's happening this fall?
I don't want to steal the thunder of your next guest because I know who's on after me. Dr. Michael Williams has done just tremendous work on our public health care group. He and Professor Sherry Bumpus and Dean Morale-Nair and just a really good team have been looking at all the kinds of elements that you need to open up for a fall semester. So let's just do some simple ones. We're all going to wear masks. We're all going to be 6 feet apart. That means the classrooms will have probably X's on the floor for not movement of furniture, so that we know exactly my desk chair, if I'm a student, is 6 feet from Mark's desk chair, who's a student, and that the faculty lecturer podium is 6 feet from the first row of students. We've measured every one of those classrooms. We talked about that a little bit our last TV show, Mark. We've used our GIS graduate students and our faculty to do that. Those are just a couple. We're going to have a check-in process. So you and I every day, since you're teaching for us, you and I every day that we want to come to the university, we'll look on our phone and we'll answer certain questions, and then we'll be approved and we'll get a green sticker if we answer the questions that tell us that we're healthy to come to campus. If we answer one that's questionable, we'll get a red dot, and the red dot will go to a call center where we'll have some health professionals that'll dialogue around those, anything that caused that red dot to come forward. And then we'll have a desk outside of Welsh, for example. We'll have a desk where someone will check to see if you have a green dot or a red dot, and then you'll be able to come into the building. So those are just a few. Hand sanitizer stations, every building, most every class. Sinks. I just heard from Provost Longworth this morning that we have some classrooms that have sinks, particularly the labs. We're going to have a specialized soap available for those sinks. It's just basically a really high-powered, nice quality soap. Just a little tidbit here for the viewers, Mark. I asked a question about hand sanitizer versus soap. I would have assumed that hand sanitizer was the safer of the two. Right. It is not. Soap is actually better than hand sanitizer. So if you and I go to the sink, we cover our hands with soap, We sing happy birthday song twice. We wash our hands off. We're in better shape than to use hand sanitizer.
That's a surprise.
Those are things we're learning and trying to share.
That I had no idea that was the case. As we talk about President Smith, as we talk about the classes for the fall, obviously there are online classes, there are hybrid classes, and whatever the case might be. What is the percentage breakout looking like right now from a planning standpoint in terms of the percentage of classes being offered exclusively online versus the classroom? Any idea what that breakout might look like for the
I think we're going to know that answer definitively by Friday of this week, Mark. We're going to all the deans and department chairs to ask them what classes comport best to online versus in person. We know that we're not going to be able to do 50-50. We can't be 50% online, 50% in person. We just don't have the classroom space with that distancing that we were talking about to do that. You know, you've taught classes with 35 students in it. I've taught classes with 35 students in it. You need a room to really teach 75 students to have 35 in there, maybe even 85 students to have a 35-person classroom. So that's going to be a challenge. Will we hit 60-40? I'm not even sure of that. I think it's going to be a bit less. We'll have some hybrid classes where occasionally we'll be in person, but more often we'll be online. And then, of course, we'll have the all online option and then the all in person option. A lot of lab classes will be all in person. They just almost need to be.
Yeah, I recently saw an article in the Detroit Free Press highlighting Eastern Michigan's plans and what you're doing, what the university is doing, I should say. Interestingly enough, in the article, they talked about getting student involvement. So as you've been developing the plans for the fall, talk to us about the student involvement in the planning process for the fall as well.
Well, I've done several interviews in the media, and we always try to bring students in to ask their perspective. I said to you right before we started filming, we've gotten a lot of feedback from students who obviously took almost all their coursework online from March 15th till the end of winter semester. We have feedback from students on summer A that was online, and now we have summer B, which is still going, where we have some in person and some online. We're trying to gather as much data as we can there. We're using residence hall staff to give us input as well. We have students that are in health and human services that are going to be involved in our call center activities, working with Washtenaw County Health on the contact tracing. So we've used a lot of student viewpoints to help us determine how we're going to move forward.
And as we're talking about students and moving forward, talk about that single room guarantee. We talked about it last month. What is the status of that guarantee that was announced several weeks ago?
Believe it or not, Mark, the typical semester, we have about 225 to 250 students that'll take a single room option. We are at 601 right now. And what would they say? There's no room at the end. We're full on single rooms. Now, that doesn't mean that someone might not drop out and someone's on a waiting list to go to a single, but that's been a very, very popular element of what we've been doing.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. It ties into certainly the social distancing and certainly maintaining that spacing as well. Of course, as you're watching this, we're encouraging all of you to adhere to the governor's guidelines. I know Eastern Michigan is. The CDC guidelines, make sure you adhere to that. We want to make sure that everyone is safe as you think about going back to school this fall, which leads me to masking. We know the governor's requiring that everyone wears a mask. I know that Eastern Michigan's doing the same thing, but I think the university's ordered, 100,000 or some number?
That is correct. 100,000 masks. Some will be, some of that 100,000 purchase, which has already been processed, Mark, and we will have them by probably mid-August before people are back. We'll have some cloth, we'll have some paper, but we will have ample number of masks, and 100,000 is the right number. That's our first order. And surprisingly, they kind of have an E on it like this somewhere. All the masks have, like you have on. We have an E on those masks. They're a green E, but really, I think just to label and to logo the mask. But yes, we have to follow the governor's executive order: mask, social distancing, hand washing, just really good public health in the midst of a pandemic.
Absolutely, absolutely. And last time we chatted too, President Smith, we were talking about the challenges and with the international students, there was obviously some discussion about that in Washington, D.C. This is not a political show. This is a general interest show. But talk to us about, from your perspective, the international students in terms of coming back to campus this fall as well. Any plans for them?
Our biggest challenge right now is visa operations, because the visas in certain countries, the embassies are not open. So we have returning international students who that will be easier for, but new students will be a bit of a challenge. We have some that want to take some online coursework. So we do have a plan around bringing our international students back. We just know that there's some obstacles we can't control. I can't open an embassy as much as I might like to. I just can't. So those are the things that we have to be mindful of. Do we have some students that are saying, I was going to come in the fall and now I'm delaying until winter semester? Absolutely we do, and we understand why. For example, in the Kingdom of Jordan, the airport's not open. So we have a number of students who live in Amman, Jordan, who are returning students. They just have to wait for their airport to open before they can come. And some of your listeners and viewers will know we have a direct flight several days a week coming from Jordan with a stop in Montreal to Detroit. So it's a very popular connection. We just have to wait and see when those are going to open up.
You know, and I think this whole, I know we have less than a couple minutes remaining together, but as we think about this whole technology component, this continues to be a major part of going in the fall now. Maybe Zoom technology or other technology will clearly become a integral part of the strategy on a go-forward basis. And I think that professors are becoming much more comfortable with it. And of course, I'm sure the students are as well.
And even old guys like President Smith are getting used to it.
Yeah.
Zoom, Skype, Google Hangouts, we're using it all.
Yeah. So again, you're doing a great job of communicating with the university community with all the emails. There's a website I know that's been established. Do you know the website, by the way, that people can go to for information?
Oh, you know, I'm always dangerous with that, Mark. I'll give you the wrong. Wrong hashtag, I'm afraid.
No worries. What we'll do is we will put it as this show is released. We will make sure it's in the text and the copy that there's a website that you can go to certainly find out what's going on. President Smith, I want to thank you very much for the second month, keeping us engaged and informed as to what's going on for the fall. Thank you very much, and continue good luck with it.
Thank you for having me. I certainly appreciate it, Mark.
My pleasure. And before we go to break, this will be Eastern Michigan University's 100th homecoming celebration. Think about that. And, you know, as a student, when I was a student at Eastern Michigan, I went to many of the homecoming celebrations, and I still do as a graduate of the university. So we want you to sit back and relax and enjoy a brief video that shows the tradition, that shows the history of Eastern Michigan University and the celebration of the university as the community comes together to celebrate Eastern Michigan University's legacy and its history. And we'll be right back, and then we'll be continuing the conversation. Welcome back to this special edition of EMU Today TV with a great video talking about the history and the tradition of this great institution. As we mentioned, this will be the 100th celebration, 100th anniversary of homecoming. So we know there's a lot of uncertainty with it, but we are continuing the conversation with some uncertainty due to the pandemic. There will be a homecoming, but my point is, we have plans for the fall. You just heard President Jim Smith talking about those plans. And I'm so pleased to welcome Dr. Michael Williams, and he's a member of the Public Health Work Group. He's a professor, PhD, I should say, at Eastern Michigan University as well. Dr. Williams, Michael, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me.
So glad to have you. We heard President Smith give us an overview as we're preparing for the fall about what the university is doing at the higher level in terms of getting the university ready for the fall. Give us the mission of the Public Health Work Group that you're currently sitting on. What specifically is its role? What is the overall mission?
So the charge to the Public Health Work Group was to look at, provided we reopen the campus with all the uncertainties that are going on, that we would basically say, how are we going to keep people safe when we reopen? So that was kind of our mission. And we specifically focused on the science behind it. What is the science? What is not true or untrue, or what is not known, so that we could make recommendations for reopening.
Okay, and as you know, we've heard a lot about data. We've heard a lot about science and the daily briefings from the administration of the state of Michigan, for example. And so you're saying Eastern Michigan is doing the same thing, follow the data, follow the science. Based on that information that you have, the work group specifically has come up with some recommendations. What are some of those recommendations that the university is looking at implementing potentially as we prepare for the fall?
So probably the first and most notable that has been in the public is the physical distance issue. Mm-hmm. So we're like the governor and the public health experts around the world and CDC and the World Health Organization, we're recommending that we wear face coverings at all times and that we maintain a minimum of 6 foot distance from other individuals. So there's been several other groups working on that in terms of how will we do that, what classrooms have sufficient space, what classes probably cannot be offered in seat simply because there isn't sufficient space. And that one's pretty much, we feel the same way, that the science says 6 feet distance with face coverings makes the most sense. And there is a group of administrators and staff working on how to make that happen.
You know, and as you talk about the space, and we know Eastern Michigan has approximately 20,000 students. In a normal situation where students are coming to campus and they're leaving campus, we have a lot of students who drive a commuter program and students who stay on campus. So that leads me to my question. On any given day under this pandemic situation, again, understanding no absolutes, we can't predict the future, I get that. An estimate of the number of people that might be on campus at any point in time, or maybe in the classroom at any point in time?
So again, it really depends. Pretty much what we've been instructed as a department head is that any class that's over 50 probably will not have a space available sufficient to maintain 6 foot distance. So anything greater than 50, we probably have to consider moving to remote learning or online learning or some other method of instruction. My incoming class of nursing students has 112, and so we will have to do remote learning because there's no place that we can have that many students on campus and maintain that distance.
It's going to be a change. It's going to be interesting to get that adjustment, but obviously we're doing it for the right reasons. Now, will professors and instructors have the opportunity as well of making a choice? So for example, historically, let's say you have an instructor or professor that would normally be teaching a class in the classroom. Will they be given the option of converting that class from face-to-face to online as well?
So I think faculty have been given some opportunities to provide input. I've talked to faculty outside of nursing who've said, I'm a bad online teacher. You really want me in the classroom? And so, that person's preference is to do that. So all faculty have preferences of whether they want to teach online, whether they want to teach remote. Department heads have reached out to faculty to figure out, what their preference is. We do have to, deal with American with Disabilities accommodations. So if there's accommodation, we have to do that. And this week, we're really searching to find out, are people that are coming back to campus okay with that? I, again, have classes where students actually have to perform physical exams on each other. They cannot maintain a 6-foot distance when they have to touch a patient. So again, how are we bringing them back safely is the question. And each department will actually create their own plan about what's unique to their department and what special considerations they need to have in order to do the sufficient education they need to do.
So there's basically an overview. There's an EMU over umbrella strategy preparing for the fall, but it's going to be up to each department, every specific area, to help to execute that plan based on what the specific needs are.
Absolutely. In fact, I can tell you, we had a discussion with the folks from the theater about how do you maintain social distance or physical distance in the theater, and I learned a lot because I don't know their area. My area for me is very easy, but yeah, so the plan would be that they would develop these individual plans, submit them, a group would review them and approve them or make modifications or suggestions how to do that.
So one of the things about students and faculty is historically when they're on campus, they want to eat, they're hungry in between classes. You know, as I was preparing for our discussion, the dining areas will be offering certain things being pulled from the menu. Talk to those viewers about the dining options and how they're being handled in preparation for the fall as well.
So one of the things I think that was surprising to me as a member of the public health group, but I think also having been the director of the School of Nursing and a nurse for 36 years, that a lot of people have reached out independently to myself and my director of nursing operations, Dr. Sherry Bumpus, and our dean, Dr. Morelli Nair, and we've met with them, and dining has a phenomenal plan all set to go. And some of that is dependent on the phase of reopening that the governor has. So, you know, if we get all the way to where we're fully open, they can return very much to operations as normal. We don't anticipate that happening, but they have, you know, kind of grab and go boxes available. And I will say, I have been so impressed by dining, housing, athletics, the physical plant people, the plans that they've come up with kind of on their own in anticipation of our recommendations, because you know the recommendations just got finalized last week. So they've been anticipating them with bated breath, and they're developing their plans and moving forward.
You know, one of the things that I remember distinctly when I sat on a virtual presentation that you were part of right after we did the last month's EMU Today, the special edition, is you talked about, I never thought about this, but, and we're keeping this conversation in the overall scope of the conversation towards being safe. But for example, you sit in restrooms and you talked about the fans, what do you call those things? The air dryers. I didn't realize that you made an interesting comment that the air dryers are being disengaged. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they're being disengaged because they could, in theory, blow the particles and make them airborne, I guess. Is that a fair way of saying it?
That's absolutely true. So there's a couple hospitals that have put in hand dryers and have to remove them because they actually spread. So the use of fans or hand dryers or space heaters, even in the winter, that they're not going to be used because they're going to blow stuff around. So again, we all have to rethink stuff differently than we've done in the past.
I teach in the College of Business, been teaching there for several years. You know, I'm used to going into the classroom under normal circumstances. So kind of walk me through as a professor, as an instructor in the College of Business. So Mark Lee gets out of his car. If he's going into the classroom this fall, he parks over at COB. What's the process? Walk me through what happens.
So ideally, we want you to wear a mask when you get out of the car. And part of that is, again, to protect other people, because you can run into colleagues that you forget to, you know, social distance and also forget to wear a mask. So we're asking you to wear a mask. You get to designated entrance in the building where you go through a series of health screening questions. Now, those are going to be made available on a URL, or you can download it so it functions like an app on your phone. And you can do that before you even get to campus. So you're kind of pre-screened. You'll get a little green screen that comes up that you show to the people at the desk to say, yep, I'm approved to get into the building that day. So it'll be a daily check. And then once you get in the building, again, maintaining social distancing, those types of things. In the classroom, I would say you get to your class, and what I would do, and what I'm recommending people do is that, there will be cleaning supplies in the room. So if you're going to be at the lectern or whatever it is in the beginning of the space, I would recommend that you put on gloves, that you disinfect the area you're going to be working in, get rid of the gloves and materials, use hand sanitizer again, and then you're all set to go. And then when you're done teaching and touching all of the equipment, then you would basically also use hand sanitizer.
So Michael, a quick question about testing. A lot of discussion about testing, and as we think about preparing for the fall, should students and faculty, everybody is across the university community, be tested? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, one of the primary things that we're looking at is we're promoting screening as the day-to-day best way to detect whether or not you have symptoms. If you have symptoms, then you would be referred to get testing. But random sampling or sampling of all students that are asymptomatic, the literature doesn't support doing it. The county doesn't have the supplies to do it. It's outrageously expensive, and it's uncomfortable if you've had to have a nasopharyngeal swab done. So we are not recommending it. We do have special populations on campus. We're talking with athletics, housing, those individuals that we may recommend testing. But that's to be decided in the future.
So now let's kind of give the students who may be viewing this several questions from last month. As a student, they walk into COB, the College of Business, and what process? They go through a similar process as the instructors?
Absolutely, same process. They will also be screened, so they can do their screening at home before they drive to campus. They can also screen if they live in the dorms.
Okay, and so as they walk into the classroom, let's say the main floor, let's just say a classroom that seats a historical class of 30 students, for example, 25 or 30 students. What would be potentially the typical size of a student class in the fall?
So probably, and again, I don't know because there's not a typical thing at Eastern, I think, but basically it's probably about a third of what you would see in a normal class. And a couple of the classrooms that I have seen, they have put X's where students, cannot sit. So it's really clear you're maintaining sufficient distance.
It's going to be interesting. We're certainly in unusual times. And, as I think about this, here we are in the latter part of July going into August, and classes are, as of right now, are scheduled for August the 31st. That will be here in no time. Absolutely. I know as we wrap up quickly, you have recommendations. At what point do you think that the recommendations will be finalized or implemented?
So the steering committee and the executive leadership team at Eastern and Dr. Smith will soon be releasing all of that information, is my understanding. I will just say that all of it is subject to change depending on the pandemic, depending on the science we learn. One of the things that we had happen last week is we had a change in Canadian residents coming to the US on July 21st that changed our recommendation because of that change. So we have to be constantly watching.
Dr. Michael Williams, I want to thank you very much for your time and giving us an update. We appreciate it, and stay safe as well.
You too. Take care.
Thank you. All right, so this was our second special edition of EMU Today. Our objective is to keep you engaged, to keep you up to speed in terms of what's going on for the fall as we plan for the fall of 2020. Certainly because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, things are changing. We're going to encourage you to go to Eastern Michigan University's website for ongoing updates. So we will check you out in the fall for EMU Today. Enjoy the rest of your summer.